listener production.
Welcome to the Motorsport Brief. It's Wednesday, the 31st of May, 2023. What a weekend of racing. A shower during the Monaco Grand Prix spiced things up. And at the Indy500, it was a wild dash to the finish that kept us on the edge of our seats. Today, you'll meet the Aussie who played an important part in Roger Penske's 19th win at the greatest spectacle in racing. G'day everybody, Greg Rust with you for this week's Rusty's Garage shortcast. Thank you for all the feedback on our latest long-form episode 2 with Nathan Prendergast, who has made quite a mark on motorsport TV coverage locally and globally, from Supercars TV and drag racing in Australia and New Zealand through to World Supercross, Dakar and F1. You will enjoy that journey with him. Lots of laughs along the way. Now, while we're on the subject of kind of spreading your wings to work in motorsport beyond this corner of the world, today's guest is a shining light. A bit like James Small, who we had on recently, Luke Mason is now based stateside and works in a significant role on Josef Newgarden's car. So that win in the 500 must have felt bloody special for Luke too. He has dialed in from Charlotte, North Carolina. Congratulations.
Cheers, mate. It still doesn't sound real when you say it like that, but the more people keep telling me it happened, I might have to start believing it soon.
There is a cool piece that listeners can find online by the legendary Marshall Pruitt, right? Racer.com. Just to set the scene here, 6 races into your partnership with Josef, and you win, mate, an iconic race that some have waited a lifetime for.
It almost feels like you're cheating a little bit, because you see guys that have been in that paddock for 25, 30 years, busting their ass trying to win the thing, and we rock up, first time engineering the car there, and we go and get it done straight away. So it's, as I say, it's still pretty surreal to think about what we just did.
Marshall talks about, I think he said, your lips were quivering afterwards as you stood beside the famous yard of bricks. Share, if you can, a bit of that moment with us. I mean, it clearly, as it would, meant a lot to you.
Yeah, I think he just got good timing, because I've just run around like an idiot for the last 15 minutes cheering and hugging everyone. So I think I was more out of breath than what I was quivering. But no, it was, you're watching that car cross the line, and you have the moment where it's like, this is actually happening. And then at that point, I said, I blacked out for the next 15 minutes, just going mental with all the crew and everything else. And then the driver rocks up and parks it on the bricks, and he exits stage left straight into the crowd. So the first thought of all of us is, well, we're going into the crowd. So off we went. Off we went, and by the time we'd climbed the fence and had a good time with the crowd there, you said I was out of breath. So I sort of slowly made my way back to the bricks there, and then sure enough, Marshall sticks a microphone in my face and says, "Let's go." So what he captured was about as raw emotion as you could get. I think it was right there, right then.
Those celebrations in the crowd will be replayed time and again. They were really cool. Take us a bit beyond that. You may not be able to share too much with us, Luke, but once everything settled down and you were, back with the team and what have you, and Roger and so on, what were the celebrations next phase like?
Yeah, so you do all that stuff on the track, and then you go up and they put the car up on the ramp, and you go up the top there on the podium. So we all gather around there, and then the wreath comes out and the milk comes out, and that starts going everywhere. So, there's multiple bottles of milk that get passed around and shared around the team. So that got drunk pretty quick, and then that got spilt very quick on everyone else, and more photos, and we get that done. And then from there, it's down to the bricks, and they go do their little victory lap in the convertible there and wave to the crowd, and they line all us up. So when he comes in the front straight there, he jumps straight off, and we get down on our hands and knees and make out with some 50-degree bricks, which was I think that was the moment it really hit home what we were doing. Is you see people and you watch that on TV, that tradition, and being able to say that you've ticked that box and done that was pretty special.
Luke, in this business, as you know, mate, some days are diamonds, right? Is it true that you guys fundamentally left the car alone for the whole race. It seemed like it was just perfect. Is that correct?
Yeah, so you go into these things thinking you're going to get it wrong and the weather's going to change and the track rubbers up and grips up, and obviously you go forward and backwards depending on where you are track position wise. So the expectation is you're going to touch something at some point, and more often than not, we're engineers, we can't help ourselves. We want to try and make everything better, but we just kept going through the day, and we kept asking the question, do we need a tyre pressure adjustment? Do we need to touch a wing? What do we need to do here to put ourselves in the position to go? And every time we asked, he's like, no, it's good, don't touch it. And we kept asking, and he kept saying, don't touch it. So, yeah, you have those days where the thing's perfect and you don't touch a thing. It's as an engineer, that's about as good as it gets.
Agreed. It's kind of still relatively early, right, in your IndyCar engineering chapter. What is it like working for the captain, Roger Penske, Tim Cindric, that whole organisation, and what was their reaction to this win?
You just pinch yourself that you're just surrounded by quality. You've got Roger and Tim who have been at done it forever, and the one that got me was, we've got four-time Indy winner Rick Mears in our garage the whole 2 weeks, just hanging out, having a chat like he's your best mate, about to go have a beer with you after practice, and you're surrounded by all these people, and everyone's just so committed and so driven, and all they want to do is win the race. It's whatever it takes to win that race. So, I'm pretty fortunate that I get to work alongside Tim on the 2-car anyway. He's the strategist for Josef and has been for quite a long time. So me and Tim are pretty close in how we go and call the race. And we haven't had an argument yet. I'm sure it's going to happen soon, and he'll win because he's the boss, and that's how it works. but no, you see those guys, and Roger comes up to you and gives you a big hug and a handshake and says, "Great job," and you're like, I just won this guy's 19th Indianapolis 500, and he knows who I am. It's still surreal.
That is why he is a great leader, mate. Yet another example of it. What about Josef, right? We see his character on Bus Bros with his good mate, Scott McLaughlin, who we all know. What about Josef, the racer, now Indy500 winner?
He would be the most competitive guy, whether it was racing, sports, life, the most competitive guy I've ever been around. And
wow.
How dedicated that guy is to his craft and what he does, in his preparation, not just the driving side, but obviously looking after himself. And we're not afraid to give him some shit about him taking his shirt off all the time whenever he gets the chance. But, if I had a rig like that, I'd walk around without my shirt off as well. So, he really is, just so passionate and dedicated and driven to be the best race driver he can be. And, ultimately he wants to be the best IndyCar driver that's ever existed. So in many respects, it makes my job really easy because, if we're not there, we're not fastest and the car's not competitive, it's me. I've got to get the car right because, he's going to figure himself out and do his job to the best of his ability.
Luke, in unpacking the race and the whole kind of month of May, for that matter, firstly, how was the lead up and how much confidence did you kind of have? Because on paper, the Penske cars didn't exactly have great qualifying speed or it looked that way. But did you feel like you had something good for the race, for the 500?
Yeah, it's a funny one because you always you do all your R&D in the off season and you go do your aero work and you work on your driveline and you think that you've made big gains, and then you rock up to the speedway and you get to Fast Friday for the first time and we get to turn the boost up, and that's kind of the moment where you can see what everyone's got. That's you have to try that day. And we sort of tried and we're like, okay, we should be there or thereabouts, and we were fairly happy. And then we got the qualifying day and we realised that we just didn't quite have it. We just weren't quite there. And you sort of go through that day, and I'll tell everyone who asks that the race day is the easy day. It's qualifying day is the most stressful day of the year by a mile, the amount of pressure that everyone's under to perform that day. And so unfortunately, we just didn't have the speed, and it wasn't for a lack of trying. We tried a few different things amongst the three of the cars to try to find a bit more, and we just couldn't get there. So that's obviously a big priority in the off season. But the whole 2 weeks, even going back to the open test, which we had there in April, we always had a really high level of confidence in the race car. It was the conversation, amongst our group was, we just have to get this thing to the front. Doesn't matter where we qualify. If we find a way to get it to the front, we're going to go win the race. And we sort of carried that confidence with the race car the majority of the way through. And yeah, it just showed there at the end there that, you can win from anywhere that race. It's strange things happen. You don't generally have to have the fastest car. You seem to have a very good, capable car and a driver whose confidence is through the roof to be able to do what he needs to do.
Like at Bathurst, a lot does happen in that 500. The race itself, mate, the first kind of 2/3 or 3/4 was this crazy sprint, and then we had some stoppages. What words did you have for Josef, and what did the kind of crew talk about, knowing that you basically had to go out at the end and lay it on the line one final time?
Well, it was funny because we had 3 goes at it. We had 3 red flags, so we kind of, Ericsson had led one, and we obviously get some live data through different channels to know that, well, he's probably going to restart in this gear, at this speed and this rev. So to maximise our performance, we need to be here. So a big part of the initial part is, making sure that we get him to do the right thing to maximise our restart. And then sure enough, we were leading the restart the second time. And we had a big plan, and we're talking about what we're going to do, what our big plan is, and unfortunately he completely botched it. So we ended up getting overtaken at the start-finish line, and that proved to be a blessing, to be honest, because we got another opportunity, and at that point it really paid to be second in line for the final lap shootout, and I don't think regardless who you were, you weren't going to win if you were first, or it was going to take something pretty remarkable to keep the lead just based on what had happened throughout the day. So to start second, we gave him the information that he needed, that it was probably going to be at this speed and we want you in this gear and be ready to go. And after that, we were hands off, and he's good enough to know what he needed to do and plan what he needed. And sure enough, he executed.
Luke's been good enough to stick around a little bit longer. Quick break and back with more on this edition of the Motorsport Brief. When I set out on this podcast mission, Luke, I wanted to make them a bit broader, right? Not just winning drivers, riders and so on. There are so many stories in our game. Worth sharing for our audience, if you don't mind, about how you got into it, right? What fueled the fire? Where did the love of motorsport come from for you?
I don't really know. I think my old man was always a rev head, and he always was around cars. And I remember looking at photos of, an old HQ Monaro, a nice panel van. He was building motors, and a few family videos of him back in the day with his big mustache and mullet working on an engine. And it's like, yes, this is pretty cool. So, and then from there, I think a lot of it was just being stuck in front of the TV at the right time, watching stuff. I can remember watching Bathurst in '95 when Larry won, and all of a sudden I liked the green car and had no idea who it was, but the green car was my favourite, and it probably all started back there, and then from there it was always, for whatever reason, it was never limited to supercars. When I was younger, I would record F1 races and watch those, and Mum will kill me, but I accidentally deleted a '96 family trip to Darwin video to watch the Monaco Grand Prix. So we've lost that one. That one's gone forever, unfortunately. But, I can tell you the race was great. I remember watching Monaco and being sent to my room for what I'd done. But, I think it's always been there from a young age. And you sort of go through that phase where you kind of realise that the money's not there to successfully drive or have what it takes to go through that path. So what's second best? So I think some way, somehow, I was going to end up in motorsport. It was just going to depend on my path, what I was going to take and where it was going to lead.
Did you always have that inner desire to want to go to either a Europe or an America? Was that something, very early on that you were passionate about pursuing?
Yeah, in some ways. I think, I was pretty early thrust into the whole supercars engineering world. I was 24 when I took over that gig on the Mercs there with Will Davison, and I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I was a race engineer in a V8 supercar. That's all I wanted to do. And when that thing looked like it was going to go in a different direction, I sort of made a choice there that if I don't move now or don't try anything, be it be it Europe or America, that I was going to stay there for the rest of my life. It was going to be Australian racing, and I was going to put down some groundwork, and that was going to be me forever. So the way it worked out and the timing of everything, it's like, well, I need to go now, otherwise I'm never going to do it. So that's kind of how it came about.
I've got very fond memories. I think there's even a lovely congratulations from Rihanna Crean there on socials for you, and Will Davison as well. That win that you talked about, it's etched very much in my mind. 2015 in Perth, that you played a very significant part in with those Mercs. The move to the US, initially, am I right in saying that the pathway was actually NASCAR, Richard Childress and so on? How did it sort of start? How did you get a break in there?
Like, I kind of realised that I was going to go, and then America seemed the easiest path, just the way it worked out and who I was talking to. And through friend groups and everyone else in racing, you meet people and you sort of form relationships. And one was with James Small. I got to know him pretty well, and I sort of asked the question, like, hey, are they looking for anyone else over there? What do they think? And sure enough, they said they were. So I got an interview with those guys, and I think it was midway through the Supercars year in 2015, I had to go back to Perth for some family reasons, and I was shown the workshop at Richard Childress, and pretty much had the contract ready to go and signed it then and there. So it was just after that, it was a matter of just getting through the year and figuring it out. So I can thank Smallsy for that one, for originally opening the door.
He's another guy who's sent you a great congratulations. Just quickly on Erebus, they've had a great run of late with Brody Kostecki, Will Brown, who's been on the podcast recently. Do you kind of watch? Do you stay in touch with people in the paddock there?
Yeah, there's still a lot of people that I'm very close to, and you always, obviously the time zone and the way it works out is a bit awkward, but generally speaking, we can get practice one over here, and if I'm feeling really bold, I can stay up and watch qualifying. And every now and then, you'll have the race on for breakfast. It's just generally how it works. So, no, I've kept my eye on it. For me, it's you never know what might happen, right? So if something were to happen and the circumstances are right and I had to come home, you got to keep your finger on the pulse. This sport moves pretty quick, and you don't want to be left behind if you had to come back.
Correct. For you to finish here, you add to the kind of wonderful Aussie, the Antipodean flavour, if you like, sprinkled through the Penske Racing organisation. Will Power, of course, reigning IndyCar champion. Scotty McLaughlin there, good mate of Josef's, as we've already talked about. Has it been a matter of you kind of dialing out some of your Aussie mannerisms when it comes to briefings, radio, whatever, or are you sharing some of that Aussie culture and flavour with them?
No, I'm pretty much an open book, so what you see is what you get.
It's what you get.
I've been pretty lucky that I haven't put my foot in it yet, which I'm sure is going to happen, and I'm going to get the slap on the wrist. But it does get pretty interesting when you get the three of us in an engineering debrief, and we just go on a bit of a tangent, and we start talking like we're back home at the pub having a few cold ones, and literally everyone else is looking around the room trying to figure out what the hell we're talking about.
Exactly. Fourth in the points now, just 3 behind Pato O'Ward, 11 to go in the NTT IndyCar Series. Given the form that we're seeing, from the likes of Arrow McLaren, we know how good Ganassi are, and it almost looked for a moment there like a fairy tale for AJ Foyt and Santino Ferrucci at Indy. How hard is this mission going to be to help Josef to a third title?
I mean, they don't kid about it when they say it is the most competitive championship in the world, and I think we all believe that over here. The caliber of driver and team is so high now that you can't leave a 10th behind. I think years gone by, you could afford to be a 10th off, and you'd still qualify in the 10, and you'd have good pit stops and figure it out. But now everyone's so good that we've done it this year. You miss qualifying just, and all of a sudden you're 15th, 16th, and you're trying to figure out, geez, if I just had under 10th, we would be 5th, and it's going to be difficult. We've had a really good weekend. We've celebrated a really good weekend, and today we're all back in the workshop trying to get a car ready to go, put it in the truck and head to Detroit and keep this momentum rolling. It doesn't stop.
Good stuff. Let's finish with that. Detroit this weekend, as you said. Give us a sense of that preparation, because you're back on the streets this time of downtown Detroit. And am I right in saying, too, it's a bit of a unique pit setup there for this weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a brand new track. No one's been there, and it uses part of the old F1 Grand Prix track. So there's still a few straights and corners they use from that, and then it winds around the GM building smack bang in the middle of downtown. So obviously a real important race for us, being Chevrolet and GM affiliated. So we're doing everything we can for those guys to make sure they have a good weekend and have a good result as well. So no, it's going to be an interesting one. A lot of guesswork going into ride heights and what we do with wing angles and the car setup, because no one knows. No one's walked it yet. We do have some scans, and we will jump in the simulator tomorrow night. GM's lucky for us that we're so well committed with those guys that they're going to give us some time tomorrow night, because Josef's obviously in New York gallivanting around, showing everyone his trophy and his ring, and the earliest we can get in there is 7 p.m. tomorrow night. So we'll do a couple of laps there and get our feet wet to kind of get an idea of where we need to be, and then Friday P1 we figure out how far off we are or whether we got it right.
Good on you. Hey, it has been fantastic to spend a bit of time with you. Thank you very much for coming on, for allowing us to share a bit of your story, and to hopefully inspire more engineers that might dream of going abroad and doing a similar thing to what you and James Small have achieved. Congratulations on winning the 500, being a part of that whole organisation. Enjoy the celebrations and go well for the remainder of the championship.
No, appreciate it, mate. Cheers.
He was fabulous, wasn't he? A couple of other quick stories that caught our interest this week. Clay Richards, grandson of the great Jimmy Richards, son of multiple Bathurst winner Stephen Richards, is going to make his debut in TCR competition. He's going to drive a Melbourne Performance Centre Audi. Really looking forward to that. He'll be a part of the Speed Series, June 9 to 11 at Winton there in Victoria. More recently, of course, he's been racing an 86 in Australia and did some racing over summer in New Zealand as well at the wheel of a Toyota 86. Will Brown, who was on the podcast recently, has driven a sprint car at Sydney Speedway, joining the likes of Cam Waters, Shane Van Gisbergen and Brodie Kostecki to dabble on the dirt. While we're on sprint car racing, well done to J-Mac, James McFadden, who's in our Rusty's Garage library at Lawrenceburg there. He bounced back, returned to the winner's circle. That's a well-deserved victory too, after a bit of a tough run for him recently. Keep it going, my man. I mentioned the Monaco Grand Prix at the top of the podcast. Max Verstappen has won there, extending his series lead. But the talking point for us back home is Oscar Piastri with a points finish and impressing the team at McLaren. It didn't look necessarily that great in Friday practice, but with that little sprinkle of rain and some good decisions, he fought his way into a points finishing position. Congratulations. Statler and Waldorf, Matt Nolte and Richard Crail. It's called the Saturday Tear-Up, a little something that's caught our attention on Facebook. You'll be able to see that at each round of the Speed Series. No driver, team member, or even commentator is safe. Now, speaking of Crailsy, shining a light for a moment on some Aussies abroad involved in motorsport, not necessarily just behind the wheel. So he's headed off overseas to take in the 100th anniversary, the centenary of the Le Mans 24-hour, and some talk that our good buddy here on the podcast, Lee Diffie, will be heading to that race as well, fresh from calling the Indy500. Crailsy and Lee won't necessarily be working together, but both, we understand, will have broadcasting roles in that legendary race. We wish them well. That is it for this edition of the Motorsport Brief. Don't forget our next long-form episode out very, very soon with drag racing royalty, Jim Reed. Don't miss that. On behalf of all of our team here, I'm Greg Rust. We'll catch you next time. Bye for now.